My wife came home with a bruise and a lie. What I uncovered next shattered my family and gave me a front row seat to their downfall. Rachel walked through the front door with a mark on her arm, round and dark, about the size of a silver dollar. I noticed it right away. She told me she'd banged into the curb while getting out of her car. But I've never seen a curb leave something that looked suspiciously like the imprint of fingers. And I've definitely never met a curb that wore cufflinks. Rachel, what happened to your arm? I asked, setting my beer on the porch railing as I stepped closer, instinctively reaching for her. She flinched away from me like I'd suddenly turned into a flame. Mark, I already told you, she said quickly, brushing past me. I tripped trying to get out of the car during lunch. Caught the edge of the curb. Just a stupid accident. But her tone was a little too polished, too controlled, like she'd gone over it a few times in front of the mirror to get it just right. After 15 years of being married to her, I knew her cues. The little giveaways. Rachel had this habit. She'd touch her nose when she wasn't telling the whole truth. And right then she was rubbing the bridge of it like she was trying to erase it from her face. Must have been one hell of a curb, I said, forcing a chuckle to keep things light. Looks like it was shaped like a hand to me. Don't be ridiculous, she shot back, already moving through the house. Her heels clacked sharply against the hardwood floors, each step ringing out like a countdown. I'm starting dinner. Go wash up. I didn't move right away. I just stood there on the porch of our old Victorian, been in our family for decades, watching the sun dip behind the roofs of our quiet little town in upstate New York. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, until they don't. When something real happens, something that matters, people suddenly forget how to look you in the eye. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my younger brother, Chris. How's married life treating you these days, big bro? Weird timing. Same as always. Why? I texted back, tossing in an asterisk just out of habit. No reason. Just saw Rachel earlier, looked a little on edge. I stared at that message longer than I probably should have. Chris runs a mechanic shop way over on the east side of town. Rachel works smack in the middle of downtown at a boutique advertising agency, Jefferson and Brand. There's no logical reason they'd be in the same place during lunch hour. Then came her voice from inside. Sure. Clip. Tired. Mark, dinner's ready? That tone, that was her running on empty voice. The one she used when it was all caffeine and stress keeping her upright. Lately, she'd been pulling a lot of late nights at the office. Said they were gearing up for a huge campaign for some big hotel chain. Lots of brainstorming sessions. Long strategy meetings with her boss, Evan Jefferson. Too many meetings. And always with Evan. I slid my phone into my pocket and stepped inside. The dining room looked exactly like something out of one of those Better Homes and Gardens spreads. Rich wooden furniture, a soft amber glow from the chandelier, and a vase of freshly cut flowers set just so at the center of the table. Rachel always had a knack for keeping things picture perfect. At least on the outside. Smells amazing, I said as I took my seat at the head of the table, settling into the same chair I'd used for the past 15 years. Chicken Parmesan. She knew it was my favorite. Also, the dish she always made when she was feeling guilty. Another sign. How was work? She asked, barely glancing up from her plate. Same old nonsense. Insurance claims and paperwork, I replied, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Henderson filed a report today. Says her cat caused 15 grand in water damage. Apparently, Mr. Whiskers figured out how to twist the shut-off valve in the laundry room. I waited for her laugh. That dry little snort she always gave when something actually amused her. But it never came. That's nice, honey, she said softly, absent-mindedly pushing bits of food around her plate without really eating. I couldn't help but notice the bruise again. It had darkened since earlier, shifting into that nasty blend of purple and black that always comes a day after deep trauma. Rachel, what's going on? I said, lowering my fork. Look at me. Eventually she did. Her eyes, those soft green eyes I'd fallen in love with, were rimmed with fatigue. And maybe something else. Worry? Guilt? Fear? What is it, Mark? She asked quietly. Who did that to you? I already told you, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I hit the curb. Right. The curb, I repeated, letting the silence do most of the work. I leaned back, setting my utensils down. Rachel, curbs don't leave bruises shaped like fingerprints. She froze, and her face seemed to lose all color before turning bright red. Embarrassment? Anger? You don't know what you're talking about, she snapped, standing up abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor with a screech. I've been working insurance investigations for over a decade, I said evenly. I've seen all kinds of injuries. I can tell the difference between an accident and someone grabbing you hard enough to leave a handprint. She turned away as if looking at anything else in the room might somehow undo the moment. I don't have to sit here and be interrogated. No, you don't, I replied calmly, standing up too. But you're going to tell me what really happened. Or, I let the sentence dangle there between us. The question I hadn't even fully formed myself. Or what? What was I actually prepared to do? Find the guy and knock his teeth out? Call the police and file a report she clearly didn't want? Storm into her office and demand answers in front of her coworkers? Or I'll find out myself, I said, my voice quiet but resolute. She stared at me, and in that pause something flickered across her face. But it wasn't fear. And it wasn't guilt either. There's nothing to dig into, Mark. Her voice was flat, but the words hit me like a slap. Sometimes things just happen. Sure they do, I said, standing now too, unable to sit in that quiet tension any longer. In that case, I think I'll give Evan a ring. See how that hotel campaign's coming along. The moment I said his name, I watched the blood drain from her face like someone pulled the plug. That was all the confirmation I needed. Why would you call Evan? She asked, her voice strained. Because you've supposedly been at the office with him every night this week. Because my brother spotted you during lunch, nowhere near your office. Because I keep asking you what's going on and all I get are rehearsed lines and half-truths. I took a step forward, keeping my voice even but firm. Because you're lying to me, Rachel. And I need to know why. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then it closed. Opened again, lips trembling. Mark? Don't, I said, already reaching into my pocket for my phone. I'd done some digging earlier just in case. Found the number for Jefferson and Brand. Had it saved and ready. I'll just ask him myself. Please, don't. Her voice barely made it across the room. Like it didn't want to be heard. But I hit the call button anyway. 2 rings and then a smooth, confident voice answered. Evan Jefferson. Mr. Jefferson, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could. This is Mark Caldwell. Rachel's husband. There was a slight pause, like he was weighing how to respond. Then cool and polished, Mark. What can I do for you? My wife came home today with some pretty serious bruises on her arm, I said, choosing each word carefully. And I was wondering if you might know anything about that. There was a longer pause this time. Longer than it should have been. And when he spoke again, the warmth in his voice was gone, replaced with something sharper, colder. As a matter of fact, I do. My stomach twisted. Come again? I hit her. Just like that. Like he was commenting on the weather. I'm sorry, what did you just say? You heard me, he said, voice completely detached. She got mouthy today, so I grabbed her. Left a bruise, huh? Good. Maybe next time she'll think twice before stepping out of line. The phone felt like ice in my hand. I looked over at Rachel. She was already staring at me, her eyes wide, terrified, silently pleading. Shaking her head like a child who'd made a terrible mistake and didn't know how to fix it. You hit my wife, I said, every syllable dragging out of my mouth. Damn right I did. And if that bothers you, what are you gonna do about it, little man? I ended the call without another word. Silence fell across the dining room like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Rachel's chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. I couldn't tell if she was shaking more from fear or shame. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because all I could hear was his voice, casual, smug, and unbothered. Mark, I can explain. Can you? I asked quietly, placing the phone down on the table like it was something fragile that might shatter if I let go too fast. Because right now, I'm struggling to wrap my head around how your boss thinks it's perfectly acceptable to lay hands on you, and why you walked through that front door like nothing had happened. Rachel's lips parted like she wanted to answer, but all she managed was, it's complicated. Try uncomplicated, I said, not raising my voice, but every word landed with weight. She dropped back into her chair like the air had gone out of her. And just like that, she looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with work or caffeine. Evan and we've been seeing each other. Her voice barely carried across the space between us. It's not. Don't, I cut in gently. It never is. I eased myself back down, feeling the tremor in my hands as I laced them together in my lap to keep them steady. How long? 3 months, she said, not even trying to sugarcoat it. And Chris. That got her attention. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. What about Chris? He messaged me earlier. Said he ran into you at lunch. Asked how married life was treating me. I shook my head slowly. Funny kind of thing to say unless he knows something I don't. The room went quiet again, and when she finally answered, her voice was barely more than a breath. 6 weeks. I felt the words land in my gut like a punch. The kind that doesn't knock the air out of you right away, just leaves you staring, waiting for the pain to hit full force. Jesus, Rachel, I whispered. I wasn't even sure if I was angry or just numb. My brother? I didn't plan any of this, she said quickly now, like the speed would make it sound less terrible. But it happened. And I don't know how to undo it. And now your boyfriend, your boss, feels entitled to rough you up when you talk back, I said, throwing up sarcastic air quotes. Mouthy, wasn't it? What exactly did you say to him that crossed the line? I told him I was done, she said, voice cracking. That I wanted to end it, with both of them. Both of them. I let the phrase hang in the air, repeating it like it tasted foul. She dropped her eyes to her lap. How thoughtful of you, I said, not trying to hide the bitterness anymore. Mark, please? You know what this looks like, right? I asked, my voice tight. Chris asking if everything's fine with us out of the blue. That wasn't just concern. That was a setup. That was him fishing. I pulled out my phone again. Opened the last text from Chris. Everything all right with you and Rachel? That was the question, wasn't it? The real one. The one that burned. I deleted 3 drafts of a reply before finally typing. That's what I'm trying to find out. Chris's garage sat out on the edge of town, a low-slung rectangle of metal and concrete, surrounded by patchy grass and gravel. The building hadn't changed since high school, just aged like everything else. Barnes Brothers Auto Repair. That's what the hand-painted sign still read, like we were a team. But truthfully, we hadn't been brothers in any meaningful way for a long time. We just shared a last name, and even that felt like a stretch now. He fixed engines. I fixed fraud. Turns out we were both terrible at our jobs. I found him under the hood of a beat-up Ford, grease on his hands and sleeves. He didn't look surprised to see me. Not entirely. Well, he said, standing upright and wiping his hands on a rag. That didn't take long. Generous of you, I muttered. He squinted at me. Generous? Yeah. Especially considering? Considering what? Considering you've been ducking my wife for the last 6 weeks. He didn't respond right away. Then the wrench in his hand slipped from his grip and clattered to the concrete floor. The wrench hitting the concrete echoed through the garage like a gunshot, sharp and final. Mark, don't, Chris said, almost pleading. I raised my hand, not in anger, just to stop the words before they made things worse. Don't insult what's left of my intelligence, I said, keeping my voice low but firm. She told me. About Evan. About you. About everything. He sank onto a rolling stool beside the car, the tension draining from his shoulders. In that moment he looked worn down, older than his 38 years, older than I'd ever seen him. How much did she tell you? He asked, voice tight. Enough, I replied. 3 months with Evan. 6 with you. He gave the slightest nod. That was all the confirmation I needed. How many times? I asked. What? How many times did you sleep with Rachel in this garage? He shifted on the stool, uncomfortable now. Mark, don't do this. You don't really want to know that. Actually, I do, I said with the same cold detachment I used in interviews. Call it professional curiosity. You remember what I do for a living, right? I chase lies. I break down timelines. I deal in details. He looked down at the grease-stained floor, jaw working. Eventually he said, maybe a dozen times. Maybe more. On the workbench? I asked. Yeah, sometimes. In the back office? A few times. Anywhere else? He winced. Mark, come on. Why are you doing this to yourself? Because I have to, I said, my voice catching slightly. Because I need to know the reality of what you both decided was worth throwing away a marriage over. Because once I know everything, I'll know what kind of thinking I've got left to do. Neither of us said anything after that. The drive back home took 20 minutes. I stretched it into 40, weaving a slow, aimless path through the heart of town. The streets were mostly empty, just the way I needed them. I passed Jefferson and Brand, where a few office lights still burned behind dark windows like ghosts that refused to leave. I passed the Riverside Motel, its flickering neon sign casting sickly pink pulses across the pavement, like a dying heartbeat. I passed the old bar where Chris and I used to grab beers, shoot the breeze, and watch Sunday football, back when we still called each other brother and actually meant it. When I finally pulled into the driveway, Rachel's car was already there. I didn't go inside right away. Through the kitchen window, I could see her moving around in the warm yellow light, tidying up a space that looked like something out of a catalog. The perfect kitchen. Stainless steel appliances. Matching towels. Everything just so. But the life behind that perfection had been anything but. We'd been going through the motions for a long time, I could admit that now. The silences, the quick pecks on the cheek, the excuses about late meetings and early mornings. But instead of talking to me, really talking, Rachel decided to go through the motions with 2 other men. "That's not fair," she said when I finally walked through the door, her voice brittle. I laughed, hollow and tired. "You want to talk about fair?" I dropped my keys on the counter. "Fair would have been you saying you were unhappy before you started sneaking around. Fair would have been sitting across from me in a counselor's office, telling me you were falling out of love. Fair would have been divorce papers, not sex with my brother behind the office door." She didn't argue. She just stood there, clutching a dish towel like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She flinched like the words had slapped her. "I deserve that," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. When you've spent over a decade dissecting other people's lies for a living, you develop a certain sixth sense. You learn how deception smells. You notice when stories don't line up, when someone flinches at the wrong word or offers too many details too soon. You get good at spotting the cracks beneath a polished surface. And more than anything, you learn patience. Revenge, real revenge, not the heat of the moment kind, requires a slow burn. Like a solid investigation, it demands research, planning, and perfect timing. So that's where I started, with the facts. Evan Jefferson, Rachel's boss and now confirmed abuser, was 45, divorced, no children. He'd launched Jefferson and Brand about 8 years ago, right after abruptly leaving a prestigious firm in Albany. The industry journals referred to his departure as due to unclear circumstances, which is code for someone pulled the plug before the scandal went public. His agency specialized in hospitality branding, hotels, resorts, tourism boards. And from the look of it, he'd built a decent operation. A tidy little empire propped up by reputation and just enough charm to hide the rot underneath. I took a drive down to his office building one afternoon, under the guise of needing car insurance paperwork signed. His receptionist, Darla, was a sweet woman in her early 60s, the kind who knew absolutely everyone's business and didn't mind sharing it. "Rachel's been working so hard lately," I said casually, pen in hand. "Must be some campaign." Darla leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper like we were in church. "Oh honey, I see her here all the time. Stays late most nights. Usually leaves with Mr. Jefferson." She smiled, then caught herself. "They make such a cute couple." "A couple?" I echoed. "Oh, I didn't mean that." Her hand flew to her mouth. "Just that they work well together. Like a professional couple." "Of course," I said with a smile I didn't feel. "Although, she came home with some nasty bruises yesterday. I do hope the job isn't getting too physical." Her eyes widened and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. That's the thing about small towns. Gossip doesn't just travel, it multiplies. You don't have to scream a rumor from the rooftops. All you have to do is whisper it into the right ear. Within a few days it was everywhere. I couldn't go to the grocery store without someone giving me the look, half sympathy, half curiosity. People asked if I needed anything, if they could bring over a casserole, if I was holding up okay. Poor Mark Caldwell, they murmured behind shelves of canned soup and bags of frozen peas. His wife's sneaking around with her boss, and he's too decent to see it. Except I wasn't blind. I saw everything. Rachel noticed the shift first, the way people looked at her a second too long. The sudden chill in conversations with neighbors who used to wave from their porches. She started asking questions. I gave non-answers. At the same time, I did what I always do when something doesn't add up. I started pulling threads. And Chris? He'd never been good at covering his tracks. When I requested some records for a background check on a client's vehicle, I flagged a few inconsistencies in a repair invoice from Barnes Brothers Auto. Just as a procedural check. Turns out, Chris had been sloppy with the details. Real sloppy. "Mark," Chris said over the phone one afternoon while I was at the office, his voice sharp and tense. "What the hell's going on with my claim?" "What do you mean?" "Some guy from the company's been calling. Says he needs to come back out to the shop, ask a few more questions." I thought this was already settled. I kept my tone professional, almost bored. "Insurance fraud's a serious matter, Chris. We have to be thorough." "Fraud?" he snapped. "Jesus, Mark, you think I'm trying to scam your company?" "I'm not saying anything," I said. "But the file's still open. You know how it goes." He cursed under his breath, but I let it hang. This wasn't just about a claim anymore. Evan was going to learn that putting his hands on a woman, my wife, had a cost. A real one. The kind that leaves scars. Chris. He was going to learn what it means to betray blood. And Rachel? She was about to learn the consequences of 3 months of lies, whispered half-truths, and nights spent in someone else's arms. What kind of consequences? She asked me one evening, her voice unsteady. I didn't lower the newspaper I was pretending to read. I just looked over the top of it, calm as a breeze. The kind that don't go away. She swallowed hard. You're scaring me. Good, I said. Fear's a healthy instinct. It stops people from making dumb choices. Like what? I folded the page down slowly. Like thinking they can cheat on their husband and get away with it. Getting to Evan's weak spot required a different angle. I started making a few calls, professional curiosity, I said, in case anyone asked. One afternoon, I tracked down Sarah Hutchkins, a former associate at the Albany firm where Evan had once worked. Evan Jefferson, she said when I mentioned his name. Wow, that's one I haven't heard in a while. My wife works for him now, I said casually. Just trying to get a feel for the guy. Sarah let out a dry laugh. Depends on what you mean by feel. That wasn't comforting. What kind of man is he? She didn't even hesitate. The kind who thinks power gives him permission to touch what doesn't belong to him, she said flatly. 3 harassment complaints in 2 years. They settled out of court every time. Kept it quiet. But everyone at the firm knew. That sounds serious. It was, she said. He got out before they pushed him out. You ever file anything official? To who? She said with a bitter chuckle. There wasn't exactly a line of people waiting to believe us. There was a pause. Call me, she added, when you figure out what to do. I'd love to see that creep finally get what's coming. Chris was easier. His pressure point was simple. Money? His garage looked fine from the outside, but I'd seen the numbers. Mortgaged within an inch of foreclosure. Missed loan payments. Equipment bought on credit he never intended to pay off. He was balancing everything on the edge of a knife. And I was about to give it a little push. Chris had put all his chips on that insurance payout. His equipment loans were months behind, and the shop was hanging on by a thread. He needed that claim to go through to keep his doors open. I made sure it didn't. A few days later, the investigator I'd assigned to the case, someone I trusted, called to give the final word. Mr. Caldwell, he said formally, we've concluded our review. There were discrepancies. Perfect. While Chris's world started cracking beneath his feet, it was time to bring Rachel's carefully curated image down with it. I didn't do anything overt. Just a few well-placed comments to the right people. Just enough truth to water the seed and let small-town curiosity do the rest. She's been distant, I said to Mrs. Kroll, our nosy but well-meaning neighbor, as we both grabbed our mail one afternoon. Working late all the time. Comes home wiped out, barely says a word. Her eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. Oh dear. I hope everything's all right. I don't know, I said with a heavy sigh. She's been going through something, I guess. Just doesn't feel like she's here anymore. That was all it took. By the end of the week, people had already filled in the blanks. Rachel came home that Friday looking like she hadn't slept in days. Well, drained. Her clothes hung off her like she'd forgotten how to dress for herself. People are talking about me, she said the second she stepped into the kitchen. Are they? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. What are they saying? That I'm having an affair with Evan. That I'm a homewrecker. That I'm... She trailed off, unable to finish. That's awful, I said. Are you? Am I what? She asked, even though she already knew the question. Still sleeping with him. You said you were ending it. Is that actually happening? She didn't answer right away. Just stared at the floor like it might offer a better response than she could manage. I'm trying, she whispered eventually. But he won't let me. He won't let you, I repeated. She nodded, eyes starting to well. He says if I break it off he'll fire me. And ruin me. He knows how to do it too, he has connections. Clients. Everyone in town thinks he's charming. He says no one would believe me. And that was exactly the humiliation I wanted her to feel. Not rage. Not pain. Just powerlessness. The next morning, just as I was pouring coffee, my phone rang. It was Frankie, the bartender from Miller's Tap, an old friend who'd seen too much over the years. Mark, he said low and serious. You might want to get down here. Right now. What happened? Your brother's here. Drunk off his rocker. Telling anyone who'll listen about you, Rachel, and some guy named Evan. Loudly. My stomach tightened. What's he saying? Stuff that probably shouldn't be said in public, Frankie muttered. And definitely not in a room full of regulars. You need to come get him before he says something he can't walk back. I was already grabbing my keys before Frankie even finished talking. I'll be right there. By the time I walked into Miller's Tap, the place had gone dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the jukebox in the corner, usually grinding out some old country tune, had fallen mute, as if it too didn't want to miss what came next. Chris was standing near the bar, red-faced, drink in hand, swaying slightly as he turned to face the room like it was a stage built just for him. There he is, he barked when he saw me. The man of the hour. Chris, I said, voice low. That's enough. Is it? He said, waving me off. Because I'm just getting warmed up. He turned back to the crowd, arms wide like a drunken preacher. You all want to know the truth about Mark Caldwell? He said, grinning. The truth is, this guy would rather destroy his brother's life than admit his wife doesn't love him anymore. Someone near the pool table murmured something under their breath. I didn't catch it. Oh yeah, Chris continued. He couldn't face the fact that Rachel was bored out of her mind with him, so instead he used his job to try and frame me for insurance fraud. Family, right? A couple heads turned toward me. Insurance fraud? Someone repeated. Chris took a sloppy step forward. Let me put it in terms you'll all understand, he said, now completely in performance mode. While I was declaring my undying love to her in my garage, she was upstairs in Evan Jefferson's penthouse telling him the same thing. He looked around with mock sympathy. I was her Tuesday and Thursday. Evan got Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Weekends. Reserved for good old Mark, so she could pretend to be the perfect wife while probably planning how to juggle the rest of us. I stood still. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. I just watched the look on Chris's face, the gleam of pain hidden behind all that arrogance, and felt nothing. Almost nothing. That's not true, he said, voice suddenly small. Ask her, I replied. Or better yet, ask Evan. He seems proud enough to brag about it. Even told me, with a smile, that he hit her when she got mouthy. A few people gasped. Frankie, still wiping down glasses behind the bar, stepped forward. Maybe you boys should take this somewhere else. This isn't the place. Why not? I said, turning to the crowd. Everyone's going to hear about it anyway. Might as well give them the whole story. I raised my voice, not yelling but loud enough for every person in that bar to hear. My wife, Rachel Caldwell, has been sleeping with her boss, Evan Jefferson, and my brother, Chris Caldwell, for months. Evan has a documented history of sexual misconduct. 3 settlements in Albany before he ran off here to play King of the Hill. I glanced at Chris, who was now pale and quiet. And Chris has been submitting fraudulent insurance claims for years. I just never thought I'd have to be the one to report it. Rachel, meanwhile, was playing damage control of her own. She picked up her phone and whispered something quickly. A moment later, Evan's voice echoed through the speaker. Send him in. His office was everything you'd expect from a man who wanted to feel like a god. Glass walls, brushed steel, cold elegance. Designed to make visitors feel small. Evan sat behind a sleek desk, suited in something that probably cost more than most people's rent. He looked calm on the surface, but there was tension in the way he held his pen, like it was the only thing grounding him. But even though Evan's face was composed, I could see it. The tight set of his shoulders, the white knuckles where his fingers gripped the edge of the desk. He wasn't as calm as he wanted to seem. Mark, he said, trying to sound casual. What can I do for you? You can start, I said evenly, by apologizing for putting your hands on my wife. His eyes flicked downward, then back to me. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Don't lie to me, Evan. I've already heard the recording. Heard you admit it. He swallowed. Fine. I'm sorry. Not to me, I said. To her. To Rachel. Done, he said quickly. Is that all? No. I want her fired. His eyes narrowed. What? Why? Because I don't want her working under a man who thinks physical assault is part of the job description. Because I won't have her in a situation where she can be coerced into sleeping with her boss again. And, I added, leaning forward, because she needs to feel the consequences of the choices she made. I can't just terminate her without cause, he said, trying to regain his footing. Sure you can. She's been having a personal relationship with a direct supervisor. That's cause enough. He opened his mouth to object, but I cut him off. Unless, of course, you'd prefer I make your relationship public. I'm sure your clients would love to hear how you treat your female staff. Evan sat very still. Please, Mark, he said quietly. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Anything. Too bad, I said, already standing. A week ago that might have meant something. But we're well past that now. I left his office without waiting for another word. The drive home was quiet. Rachel wasn't there. Just silence and the distant hum of a town already gossiping. By tomorrow morning everyone would know. Rachel Caldwell and her tangled mess, an affair with her boss, another with her husband's brother. The whole town would feast on it. By the end of the week she'd be out of a job. By next month she'd be a cautionary tale. Something mothers whispered about to their daughters: don't be like her. Look what it cost her. And me? I'd be free. The next morning the phone didn't stop ringing. "Mr. Caldwell," said the voice on the line, "we'd like a statement regarding the criminal investigation into your brother." "You'll have to speak to the DA's office," I said and hung up. The next call came minutes later. "Mr. Caldwell, we're following up on your complaint regarding Evan Jefferson's misconduct. Are you willing to file formal charges?" No comment. Click. Another call, this time from the state licensing board, asking questions about Evan's business practices. Then someone from the Better Business Bureau. And then the IRS. Apparently, Evan had more skeletons in his closet than anyone realized. And now the door was wide open. Rachel came back later that evening. She looked around our house like she no longer recognized it. Or maybe she didn't recognize the man sitting at the kitchen table with coffee gone cold in front of him. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," I said without emotion, "you live with the consequences of your decisions." "I meant us. Our marriage." I stared at her for a long moment. "What marriage?" She flinched. "You ended it 3 months ago when you started sleeping with Evan," I said. "You just never had the decency to inform me. We could try counseling. Try to work through this." "Work through what exactly?" I said, finally standing. "The cheating? The lies? The fact that you were sleeping with my brother?" She started to cry. "People make mistakes." "Mistakes?" I laughed bitterly. "For 3 months? With 2 different men? That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle." She looked down, tears dripping silently onto the hardwood floor. "Where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged. "I don't care. Move in with Evan." "Oh, right," I said, meeting Rachel's eyes without an ounce of softness. "Evan's getting evicted." She blinked. "Maybe move in with Chris then." "Oh wait, he's about to lose the garage. Foreclosure paperwork should be arriving any day now." Her jaw trembled. "Are you enjoying this?" "Yes," I said plainly. "I am enjoying this." I took a step closer, not shouting, just calm and clear. "I'm enjoying watching you finally understand what it means to face consequences. I'm enjoying watching you squirm under the weight of your own decisions. I'm enjoying the fact that every single person in this town now knows exactly who you are, what you are." Her voice dropped, barely a whisper. "And what is that, Mark? What kind of woman am I? The kind who sells loyalty for attention. The kind who thinks secrets won't rot. The kind who never imagined someone like me could hit back harder than you ever lied." That afternoon, a detective from the sheriff's office called me. "Mr. Caldwell, we need to talk about your brother." "What about him?" "He's in lockup. Picked up for drunk and disorderly, disturbing the peace, and assault." "Assault?" "He attacked Evan Jefferson in the parking lot outside his office. Beat him pretty badly. Broke his nose. Cracked 3 ribs. Witnesses say Jefferson didn't even get a punch in." I didn't say anything. "Jefferson's pressing charges. Assault and battery. Maybe attempted murder, depending on how aggressive the DA wants to be." "What do you need from me?" "Well," the detective said, hesitating just slightly, "Chris is saying this is all your fault. Claims you set him up. That you pushed him into this." "Let me guess, he's claiming to be the victim?" "He's trying to be. But we both know how that goes. The justice system may be slow, Mr. Caldwell, but it respects the truth, and it remembers the ones who play with fire." "I'll keep that in mind," I said and hung up. I poured myself a drink, something aged and bitter just like the last 3 months of my life, and walked to the window. There, across the street, behind parted blinds, I caught the glint of Mrs. Krall's glasses as she peered out through her curtains, trying to catch one more piece of gossip. Let her look. Let them all look. Let the entire town bear witness to what happens when you betray someone who knows how to dismantle lives for a living. My phone buzzed with a text. "Unknown number. You win. I'm leaving town. Don't try to find me. No name. But I didn't need one. Rachel." Somewhere, Evan was laid up in a hospital bed with broken ribs and shattered pride. Chris sat behind bars, stewing in his anger and the weight of the choices that had brought him there. When he got out, he'd have nothing left, No shop, no savings, no family. Rachel Caldwell would have to start over in some nameless city, far from the judgmental eyes of her hometown, with nothing but the clothes she could carry and the reputation she left behind in ashes. And me? Mark Caldwell? I'd sleep soundly for the first time in months. I walked out onto the porch, glass in hand, and watched the sun melt behind the trees. Sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys do win. I raised my glass to the sunset and smiled.